Hello YouTubers, it's JSkyler91 here, and today I'm going to be making a video on looking ahead in the CFOP or Fridrich method. There have been other videos done on looking ahead, but I think most of them have always focused on looking ahead into the first cross to F2L transition, which I agree is very important, and I'm glad videos were made about those previously. But none of them have truly focused on other transitions, such as F2L to F2L transition, or F2L to OLL transition, or OLL to PLL transition. So I'm going to make a video about that. I'm going to start today just talking about cross to F2L transition, and so this is something that Weston and Felix have done, and so I'm going to kind of build off of what they've already done. So to my knowledge, there are three basic ways to look ahead when you're doing your cross to F2L transition. The first method is the simplest of all. You're just simply going to observe. So let me preface all this that all of these things will be done, all these methods of observation and or, looking ahead in the cross are always done after you've completely memorized your cross. So, for instance, we have this really easy cross here. This may not look that easy to you, but it's actually pretty easy. It's actually a 4-move cross. So I've got this one in place here. We're doing white here. That, there. So these two I can tell are relative, which is nice. So I can just throw those two in. And then these two are already set up for a nice little move. So the cross I'm going to do here is I'm going to do an R. I'm doing it from this angle because it works out really nice. So R, D prime, R2F. Okay, so that's my cross. I've got that cross memorized. And you should not only have it memorized so that you could do it blindfolds, but also so that you could do it blindfold and, let's say, hold a conversation as well. You should have them so well memorized that you're completely comfortable with all the moves. Now, this is difficult because you got to do this again and again every solve. But this is something that you should practice doing because if you're not 100% comfortable with doing your crosses and not looking at the pieces, which is what you should be doing, you should be looking not at your F2L or your cross pieces, but at your F2L pieces, then you're going to find it really difficult to even do the simplest of these, which is simple observation. So what we're going to do here for observing, this is pretty simple. It's what you would think it is. We're going to simply look at the cube. Okay? We're just going to look at the cube. We're not going to look at these edge pieces working, but look at everything else in the cube, all the other edge and corner pairs that belong in our F2L. So I'm just going to look at the cube and see if anything pops out to me. Oh, look, so I say these two pop out to me. And they popped out, and so I would go then into my first pair. Okay? I'm doing that cross, okay? So that's observations. Pretty simple. You're just observing things. You want to, if you can, be aware of what is and is not moving. So, for instance, in this cross that I'm doing, this 4-move cross, I'm moving 3 faces, okay? I'm moving the right face, I'm moving the down face, and I'm moving the front face. It means I'm not moving the back face, the left face, or the U face, okay? So that's actually useful, and we're going to utilize that information in the later steps. So yeah, this is observation. It's pretty simple. The next way to do things is what's called corner tracking. And I heard this first from Faz, or Felix A. Zendigs, or whatever. And he explained this as basically we're going to choose a corner, such as, let's say, this corner, okay? We're going to choose this corner, and we're going to watch where this corner goes. So what we're going to hope here when we're doing this is that this corner ends up on top. So now, you want to choose a corner that looks like it's going to end up on top. And I think, yeah, this one is not going to end up on top, but that's okay. We're just going to choose a corner for right now. I guess the smarter thing would have been to choose this corner or another corner. Let's say, actually, that corner would probably be a good corner to choose because it's only going to be affected by the D moves. But yeah, so we're going to choose a corner and we're going to observe it. I don't actually really do the corner tracking that much, so I guess I'm not the best example of this. I just skipped ahead to the prediction and or observation. But yeah, so we're basically going to choose a corner. Let's just choose this one, okay? And we're going to watch where that corner goes, and we're going to hope it ends up on top. So it's right here, and we're going to do RG, R2F. Oh gosh. Actually did what I said, I think, which was a bad thing. Okay, sorry, reset that up now. It's right here. Okay, so we're going to do R D prime, R2F. Okay, So yeah, I should have thought about that. Yeah. So it ended up here. We watched that though, and because we watched it, we'd very likely be able to then see this, knowing that this one was here, and transition. So it ends up being kind of similar to the last one, but it still is. It's a more useful. It's kind of an intermediate method. Now the final method. This is the method that I think most really advanced cubers, so let's say sub-15ers, and some probably do that even before then, but especially sub-15, and if you're ever talking about someone sub-10, they almost always use this at some point at least, is the prediction method. So basically, I'm going to try and predict where a corner and an edge is put in play, is going to be once I've done my cross. So for instance, this corner right here, this blue, or this white, blue, and red edge, and this blue and red, and this blue and red edge here, sorry, corner edge, I'm going to try and predict where they're going to be. So this is actually going to be really simple. I know this one's going to end up here, and it's going to work out really nicely. But what we want to do when we do this, we want to look for corners that are relatively unaffected, corners and or edges that are relatively unaffected by our moves. So if, for instance, again, I know that I was moving the right face, the down face, and the front face. It means I was not moving the U face, so none of these corners, so basically neither of these corners are actually going to be affected. And in particular, this one is never going to be affected because I'm not going to move the back face, I'm not going to move the right face, and I'm not going to use the U face. So that's going to stay where it is. Really easy. So then all I have to predict is what's going to happen to its edge, which is right here. And this is easy because I know the only move that's ever going to move the front is this move here, and it's going to take the front down. It's just going to basically take the front and move it up one right here. And so I can predict where they are. So yeah, this takes a lot of practice. This is a really easy case. So again, I'm just to show you that I'm putting down a certain, I'm right here. I'm going to do an R D prime, R2F, yep, right here. And I already knew where that was. So the second I knew that was, I could then just start right into my putting end of my pair. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit, I'll talk next time about what I would do after that. But this basically the idea here is these three methods allow you to predict, so hopefully smooth out that transition between your cross and your first pair. But I don't necessarily think that these methods should be just learned, let's say, cold turkey. I think that there's like intermediate steps, so especially if you say you want to work with prediction. Prediction is very useful. And I think that's what you should always work up to. You can start, you don't have to just predict like the corner and the edge, because that would be difficult. You can just predict, let's say, the corner and start with that. So this is kind of like corner tracking, but it's corner prediction. So you can predict the corner and then track the edge, for instance. So, like I said, the corner, I already predicted that instantly. That was easy. It was never going to move. So now all I really had to do, if let's say I didn't want to predict this edge, instead I didn't have enough time. Let's say I had a hard cross, a 7-move cross, okay? I wouldn't have predicted this edge. I would have just said, this corner is never moving. I'm going to watch this edge and see where it goes. Okay, and hopefully it goes somewhere useful. If it doesn't go somewhere useful, it gets a little bit more difficult. Generally, though, like you can tell if this is going to go somewhere relatively useful. Like again, I know that I was only doing one F, so I knew exactly what it was going to be. This was an easy case, but there are harder cases. Like this case with this edge in this corner, you might not have known that they would stay together. Okay, so you could have, let's say, predicted where the corner was and then watched where the edge ended up, or in reverse. So that's an intermediate step to those. So yeah, those are the three methods I know, and I try most of the time to use the last method, the prediction method, because I think that's the most useful. If you guys need more examples of this, I could do so, but I think that that's pretty much explaining that. There's already been other videos done on this, so I'm not going to put a lot of time into explaining this, but this is very crucial, don't get me wrong. This normally makes or breaks my solve, so I guess it is pretty important that you guys see it, but I think this adequately shows it. Know it's here, then I can go straight into my next portion. I guess a couple of tips here would just be to make sure you really practice being able to solve your cross blindfolded, because if you can't solve your cross blindfolded, then it's really going to mess, this whole process is going to be a lot harder for you. The way I practiced that was just simply by I just simply sat down one day for 3 hours, and I just sat there while I was watching a show, so it wasn't just consecutive, and I just sat there and I did crosses, and I set up a cross, and I just would sit there as long as it took to memorize that cross. And then I would close my eyes and do it. And you should really do this, especially if, let's say, you're less than, or you average more than 20 seconds. You should sit down and do this. Every single cross you get, you should sit there until you can do it completely blindfolded. And this is probably the best way to practice it. Every solve you should practice this. Don't worry about your time limits. But yeah, that's Cross-F2L transition.